trees, just something that gives some level of scale to my crooked houses. So we've got this slope coming down. This would be the river here. What we were saying is that we've been trying to do something that might come up off the ground, and that may not totally be necessary. I mean, obviously we can get pretty high if we were to do something that lifted, but you may be able to achieve that just by, like the example, Lana had one that kind of undulated a little bit, and then that evolved into something that maybe starts at more the scale of the community, and then extends up and extends down with the site to become more the scale of a view of the mountains here. And then this kind of thing would stick up above the trees, so you'd achieve that. And then, if we're looking at a floor plan of this, maybe we start to use some of the site elements that we talked about. If you're able to kind of walk by this is the edge of the egg here, this is the river. If you're able to kind of walk by this and you have some sort of amphitheater happening here, that maybe these divisions start to inform kind of breaking up this mass into different rooms that would kind of exist on the inside of this. So this is a little out of scale. It's a little tall for how wide it is. But based on the sloping here, if we're gonna try to avoid excavating too much, maybe we start to step the floor plate. And then on the inside, we can have maybe little ramps that are kind of connecting these at different places. There would be a wall separating that. And in terms of what this is made of, if it's some kind of thick concrete shell, where we're really expressing the thickness of the material. And then there can be breaks happening where these different rooms are. So maybe in plan one of these wants to kind of jut out like this and become a door that's receiving a path that's coming down and meeting the main thoroughfare here. Flo was saying maybe one of these rooms starts to kind of pop out and become sort of an outdoor kitchen space that's open. And then now if you were to look at an elevation of this, you just see this really well-made concrete frame. And then on the inside of that, you have your glass and your mullions. So you have, one view towards the community, and then on the other side, you have a view towards the mountains. So if we're looking at that elevation, maybe if we see this kind of in the distance popping out, this is now an entrance to a kitchen.
It doesn't necessarily have to come from some height.
Yeah, it could be lower. So what we were talking about with Andres is, concrete has a huge precedence down here. It's something, this kind of thing is something that could be built. I mean, if we have northern light coming here, maybe we start to pop some of these up so that we have ventilation coming out and we have northern light coming in. For those of you who ask why northern, it's because when you're on the south, if we're looking in the south, that's where you have your most direct gain. So you have your morning sun over here, and then it's going to move to your afternoon sun. So on the north, you get diffuse light that's coming in, and it can come in a way that doesn't blind people.
And since we need to protect these two walls, right, from a lot of sun, like we can even, but we also don't want to end up with a huge wall that basically becomes like a barrier for people. So maybe there's a way, just like we saw that the community center today was kind of like broken up into those like concrete bins. Like maybe there's a way we can bring some kind of like vertical element, like very small like openings that could also help us with ventilation. But then maybe in the morning and later in the afternoon, we can start getting like some light as well throughout the space versus just indirect light. But if they're small enough, they won't necessarily heat the space too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the reason I wanted to show you the video is because, as I was saying, Zumthor, it's not so about a crazy form. It's more like he would look at something like this and say, can we be creating some kind of, if I were to kind of blow up this section of the building here, can we be creating some kind of board form texture in concrete where we see those vertical striations? And then every now and then you have a control joint, and we'll talk about why we need that.
And then actually work amazing with what I'm saying, because you can start using this.
Like
so
a
you'll
window.
have the trace of your mold, but then yes, you'll start creating openings at some of those, and those lines start in a way informing where those openings can happen.
Yeah, so the point is we're expressing sort of the making of the material. These are the wood that was used to make that formwork that's now been stripped, and you see that texture forever imprinted in that. And it sort of breaks down the scale of these massive walls. So, this is obviously a little out of scale for the height, but, you have these trees that kind of... And there's something about concrete and glass that if they're done really well, if they're detailed really well, they have a very timeless appearance to them. This very kind of robust, firm, and timeless appearance, and something about the way that, we could leave certain trees that are kind of dotting around, maybe they start to, Flo was talking about, they could start to sort of form an arc that protects this. If we're looking in plan here, this entry sequence, and then you've got them kind of lining this path coming up. You have them lining the amphitheater area. So obviously this is really just a very basic Parti diagram. This can go in a million directions, and the questions that I was asking some of the people that were sitting around before is it 4 rooms? Is it this shape even? I mean, does this want to do something else? How do we start to program this? Does this lowest space that has, since this is the lowest floor and the highest ceiling, this has the most ceiling height, does this want to become like a yoga classroom or a music classroom? That as you're passing by this, you're able to look and see inside that glass as to whatever's going on here?
Or it could be a recess, like there could be a recess mezzanine level as well, if there's no floor height.
Does one of these panels want to slant out and become that door condition? You've got like these 4 panels, and one of them just pops out, and you got a door that you can fit in that meets a path. It's kind of that element of surprise. So, I mean, what else comes to mind? I mean, again, this is just one way of approaching this, but what we're saying is we don't necessarily need to do anything crazy in terms of picking it up off the ground and creating ridiculously complex structures. Maybe we end up doing that, but there's a way of achieving some of the stuff that we've been expressing interest in terms of creating a focal point here and giving some level of height, celebrating the views to the mountains. We could have the view that's coming out in this direction, and there also could be transparency that's happening on this facade facing the amphitheater, so that'd be on this side. There could be more glass that's going on here, and then this could be more concrete, so you have kind of one treatment to the street and then one treatment to the amphitheater.